She had said the term date as if it were a casual weekend mishap. At the time, Michael's laughter was icy, hollow, and disbelieving. A date, he repeated, his words tinged with incredulity. Who is it with? Or more accurately, how many? Sophia was unflinching. Eric is his name. He works with me. She answered in a casual manner, as though she were talking about making a reservation for dinner. I really must have this. I must experience life once more. Michael felt the word hit him like a punch to the body. Still alive? 12 years together, hadn't that been enough? The weekend getaways, the mortgage, and the amusement over coffee in their bright kitchen. That was life, wasn't it? Was it all a deception, or what? Sophia, do you even hear yourself? His voice quivered with controlled rage as he questioned. You have a spouse. You made promises. Or do you find that meaningless? Sophia shrugged, her lack of interest piercing any disagreement. Michael, I've given you everything. Now it's my turn to enjoy something. That night, Michael didn't protest. Not because he concurred, but more because he understood the pointlessness of opposing someone who had already made the decision to destroy their relationship. Instead, in a low, cold voice, he issued one final warning to her. Sophia, do as you please. Actions, however, have repercussions. Michael awoke early the next morning, the determination hardening like granite in his breast. This went beyond simple treachery. It was war. He would make sure Sophia felt the weight of every piece she broke if she intended to end their life together. He created the impression of a man reborn as he began his day with precision. The overgrown mess he had neglected in previous months was replaced with a professional haircut. The rumpled shirts of his lazy married life were replaced by a sleek blue blazer that was expertly tailored. After a thorough wash, his old automobile shone, reflecting the man he was destined to become. Michael hardly gave Sophia a glance by the time she came down the stairs, wearing a tight black dress that shouted desperation. She hesitated. She was obviously hoping for a response, a glimmer of jealousy, but all she received was apathy. She said, Are you going somewhere? In an irritated tone. Go. As he reached for his keys, he answered in a contemptuous tone. A frown wrinkled Sophia's lips. How on earth can that signify anything? Michael grinned, not a warm grin, but one that was piercing enough. I stated just that, Sophia. Your date is enjoyable. Additionally, keep in mind that there are always repercussions. He left the room before she could reply. Emily, a co-worker he had been close to over the past few months, was waiting for him when Michael drove to a little wine bar on the outskirts of town. Up until now, their relationship had always been platonic. His inhibitions had been peeled away by the betrayal he experienced, giving him a fresh perspective on Emily. Her grin was so sweet when she greeted him that it felt like sunlight breaking through the rain clouds in his life. She spoke in a gentle but worried tone. You appear different. How is it different? Slipping into the seat opposite her, he asked. Emily looked at him for a second longer than she should have. They ordered wine, were self-assured and resolute, and had easy conversation. A counterbalance to the mayhem Michael left behind. He laughed for the first time in weeks. A deep, real sound that even he was surprised by. However, as the night went on, a more sinister determination took root in his chest. Moving on wasn't the only thing at stake here. It was to make sure Sophia realized how serious her treachery was. Did she wish to engage in some gaming? Michael would see to it that the rules were revised. Late that evening, Sophia came home, her high heels clicking on the tiled floor. When she noticed Michael in the living room, enjoying a glass of scotch calmly, she abruptly stopped. You're still awake, she replied in a wary tone. Icy and unforgiving. How did your date go? His voice was emotionless as he inquired. A glimmer of remorse appeared on Sophia's face as she faltered. He put his drink down with a harsh clink and said, Michael, where you win and what you did don't matter to me, but you will in due time. She knitted her brows in perplexity. What is the intended meaning of that? Michael got up from his chair, his steps methodical. Sophia, that indicates you've made up your mind. I'm currently creating my. Sophia woke up the following morning to find her bed vacant. Michael had left a single envelope with divorce papers and a letter that said, Actions have consequences on the kitchen counter. Take pleasure in your independence. But Sophia would not discover freedom. Michael had already started his plans, a series of actions intended to destroy all the comforts she had taken for granted. Michael was standing outside Jason's legal practice, clutching a manila folder that contained all of the evidence he had gathered. A few well-chosen photos, bank statements with mysterious expenses, and phone logs with late-night calls to unidentified numbers enough to demonstrate infidelity without giving Sophia just how well prepared he was. Jason shook his hand firmly as he entered. Michael, you've always been sensible. What's motivating you this time then? Michael's eyes grew gloomy. I gave everything I had for 12 years to someone who thought I wasn't good enough. I want it to sting when she sees what she's thrown away. With a slight smile on his lips, Jason reclined in his chair. Then, we're not only divorcing. Our goal is blood. Sophia began her day as usual, sipping coffee and browsing through her phone. However, her stomach fell when she saw the message from her boss. Come to the office right now. We must discuss your position. When she got there, Michael was waiting in the lobby, a cool yet collected figure. A private investigator sat next to him, handing Sophia a packet with a neutral look. She opened it with shaking hands. There were pictures of her and Eric in compromising poses that had been taken during the previous month. A thorough account of her recent actions, including a schedule of the evenings she had lied about visiting friends or working late, was located beneath them. Did you follow me? Her voice was hardly heard as she whispered. Like a dagger, Michael's voice sliced through the atmosphere. You left me with no option. Sophia, take action. There are always repercussions for them. Her boss cleared his throat and moved forward. Sophia, this is against company policy. You've been fired, with immediate effect. When Michael left without saying anything more, Sophia's entire life fell apart, leaving her to deal with the consequences by herself. When Sophia got home that night, the locks had been changed. Michael didn't respond when she pounded on the door and called his name. Rather, a neighbor gave her an envelope with one key and another letter inside. Your belongings are in storage. Inside is the address. You no longer own this house. Sophia's hands were shaking as she gazed at the note. How had things gotten out of control so fast? Only a few days prior, she had persuaded herself that Michael would always be there and forgive her, in order to tidy up her mess. Now, however, the man she had misjudged was tearing apart her life. Michael's retaliation was calculated as well as personal. Ava was a close confidante who had recognized the flaws in his marriage long before he did, so he sought her assistance. They devised a strategy together to make sure Sophia felt the consequences of her treachery. Are you certain about this? They sat in her dark apartment and Ava inquired, encircled by time frames and legal paperwork. Michael nodded, a determined look on his face. She desired independence. I'm providing her with precisely what she requested. With a gleam of appreciation in her eyes, Ava grinned. Michael, you're not simply leaving. You're ensuring that she will always remember what she lost. Sophia was affected hard by her new reality. Due to legal difficulties, her savings were locked. The friends she had relied on for emotional support started to turn away. Pertaining to her life. After Michael's investigator visited Eric, the man she had sacrificed everything for, he stopped returning her calls. She arrived at Michael's office one evening with tears streaking her makeup. Please, Michael. She gripped his arm and pleaded. I was wrong. Now I see that. Give me a chance to make this right. Michael's face was unreadable as he gazed at her. An error? This wasn't an error, Sophia. You have to accept the fact that you made a decision. Michael flourished while Sophia struggled. His increased self-assurance carried over into his professional life, garnering him admiration and respect from co-workers. Even Ava, a friend who had always been encouraging, started to view him differently. Ava spoke softly as she moved closer to them at a nice meal one evening. Michael, you're a different man now, more intelligent and powerful. Michael gave a small smile. I must have been. Sophia didn't simply turn on me. She made me face the reality of who I am. Warm and comforting, Ava reached for his hand. You are the one rebuilding, even though she broke you. When Michael's attorney sent Sophia a letter outlining the conditions of their divorce, Sophia's world fell apart. In addition to losing the house, Michael had also obtained proof of her financial carelessness, so she left with little more than her personal possessions. She arrived at Michael's new townhouse without warning in a desperate attempt to get in touch with him one more time. However, she was not greeted by Michael when the door opened. Ava was the one. Sophia's eyes widened as her countenance was torn between envy and shock. With anger in her voice, she spat, "EW, have you not been anticipating this?" Ava did not recoil. Sophia, no. I've been hoping Michael will come to the realization that he deserves better. Michael emerged from behind Ava, his face composed but forceful. Go, Sophia. You've had enough already. As the months went by, Michael's life kept changing. He acknowledged that their relationship had been based on mutual suffering rather than enduring love, and he and Ava parted ways amicably. Michael eventually got to know Claire, a lady who was as strong and kind as the man he had grown into. Without the poison that had characterized his history, their friendship developed organically. With her reputation in shambles, Sophia relocated out of state. Because of the rumors that followed him, Eric's personal life, profession, and demise were all in ruins. There was more to Michael's path than retaliation. It was about taking back who he was, and he was convinced of one thing as he stood in the sunlight of his new life. He possessed one. Sophia gazed at her image in her small apartments, a broken bathroom mirror. The ghostly woman that stared back at her was haggard, pallid, and had empty eyes. The signs of sleepless nights and ongoing stress were visible on her formerly perfect skin. She no longer recognized the lively, self-assured lady who had shown off her independence only months before. Now everything around her seemed smaller. Only blocked messages and ignored calls remained when Eric disappeared. Her so-called friends were dispersing like ashes in the wind, and her once busy social calendar was now vacant. She knocked on all the doors, but all were locked. She missed every chance that came up. Michael, a man she had underestimated, came next. She was left reeling from his cold, deliberate destruction of her life, yet she couldn't bring herself to despise him. She had been warned by him. Simply put, she had never thought he could follow through. In a warm cafe, Michael sipped his coffee at the corner table while the room was illuminated by the golden rays of the morning sun. Claire, who sat across from him, laughed softly and melodiously. Since they had been dating for 3 months, every moment they spent with her was refreshing. "How is the divorce proceeding?" Claire inquired in a kind but inquisitive tone. Michael gave a small smile. In the end, Sophia didn't dispute anything. "How do you feel about Claire?" tilting her head and looking into his eyes as she seemed to know that fighting was useless. Relieved by her query, he took a big gulp of his coffee. Claire stretched across the table, her hand covering his, and said, "I'm glad you're moving forward, Michael." You deserve to be happy. While Michael prospered, Sophia fell more into despair. "At last it's finished, and I can finally concentrate on what really matters." She made a number of bad choices out of desperation, each of which took her farther away from the life she had known. After Michael's attorney revealed her infidelity and financial mismanagement during the divorce process, she was only able to find a part-time work at a diner. She put up with coworkers' whispers and customers' critical looks every day because they knew she was that woman. The one who had destroyed her marriage for a moment's excitement. The humiliation was intolerable. Yet she was forced to put up with it. After her work finished late one evening, she was looking at old pictures on her phone, including ones of her and Michael grinning while on vacation and on holidays, their arms encircling one another. She held the phone to her chest and sobbed softly. She felt the heavy weight of regret pressing down on her more and more each day. Eric. Sophia was not doing much better with the man she had staked her life on. Eric's work, clients, and even his family were aware of Michael's transgressions thanks to the efforts of his private investigator. He was shunned within weeks after rumors of his relationship with a married woman quickly spread. Promotions vanished, his personal relationships dissolved, and his coworkers drifted apart. The last straw was when Eric's girlfriend, who had been oblivious to his adultery up until that point, packed her bags and moved out. Soon after, he left town, leaving a legacy of damaged relationships and a damaged reputation. Michael unexpectedly ran into Sophia on a cool winter afternoon. Claire was straining to star her battered automobile in the parking lot when he saw her there. He had gone at the grocery store to get a bottle of wine for supper with her. He paused for a second, unsure whether to leave or to give her one final chance. Finally, he came over. "Sophia," he said in an even voice. Her head sprang up as she flinched at the sound of his words. She started crying as soon as she saw him. Her voice cracked as she murmured, "Michael." His expression was impenetrable as he stood there. "I was surprised to see you here." Sophia turned away with embarrassment. "Now," she whispered, "this is my life. Don't I deserve it?" Michael's mouth clenched. Although he wasn't naturally nasty, he couldn't help but feel pleased when he saw her reduced. "Sophia, we all have to live with the decisions we make. Life is like that." Tears were running down her face as she nodded. "I apologize, Michael, for everything. I was blind and self-centered. I no longer even recognize myself." Michael let out a sigh. He now possessed a quiet resolution in place of the wrath that had once engulfed him. "Sophia, I hope you managed to get on with your life. But it's gone, whatever we had. You have to come to terms with the fact that he turned and left her standing there without waiting for an answer." Michael and Claire's lives remained prosperous. Their relationship was characterized by mutual respect, trust, and laughing when they moved in together. Michael was able to mend the scars Sophia had left behind thanks to Claire's steadfast support. And he felt completely at ease for the first time in years. Claire laid her head on Michael's shoulder one evening when they were sitting by the fireplace in their comfortable house. She whispered, "You're a good man, Michael. Never allow somebody to influence your feelings in any way." With a smile, Michael kissed her hair. "The best thing that has ever happened to me is you." Eventually, Sophia moved out of town in search of a new beginning away from the location where her errors had made her who she was. One step at a time, she started to reconstruct her life after finding a modest apartment in a peaceful city. The anguish of Michael's passing. It was a lesson, a reminder of what she had lost and what she would never take for granted again, but it never completely disappeared. In the meantime, Michael accepted his new life with Claire. He discovered that love required more than just sacrifice. It was about respect, cooperation, and growth on all sides. Even though his past still had wounds, they no longer defined who he was. Stronger and wiser, he had risen from the ashes of treachery. And he was convinced of one thing as he looked to the future: he would never again accept anything less than what he was due.